Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the talk show. Now, we're not all crazy. It is 1st of December, so now you're officially allowed to wear Christmas hats. And more importantly, Victor Lundqvist, you are allowed to play Christmas music. Beth, where do you stand on this? Christmas music before or after December 1st?
You know, I kind of roll right into Christmas the day after Thanksgiving. So Friday, I was in feeling jolly and in the spirit. So I think that might put me in Victor's camp because Victor, you are like early before. When's your first day?
Wow, you could not be farther
Victor's been
off.
scolding me for the last week or so for playing Christmas music. And like, Victor, what's your most hated song ever?
Well, Christmas song. I mean, I wouldn't say hated, annoying. It's Mariah Carey, that one. All I Want for Christmas Is You.
So if anyone want to
That one grinds my gears.
Actually, don't egg our house because Victor and I share the same house. So you'd be egging my house as well. So bad idea. But we've had some great racing over the weekend. Beth, Vik, and I, part of the broadcast team, together with Frank, we sat through 7 hours of amazing racing. I mean, it was really thrilling to be watching something different. I'm not sure if you share the same feeling, Beth and Vik, but we're so used to having zones K, L, and T, and it becomes quite mechanical. Like, you come on, you kind of expect what to see, Beth, but then you only had 4-man racing, and like, it was edge of your seat kind of racing.
It was so edge of your seat. And I was actually thinking about it overnight. And I'm like, what do we see in the typical races and what have we seen yesterday? And what was interesting was that we usually talk about, oh, this person is drafting, trying to conserve. Like we saw literally like not any drafting. It was accidental and it was because the racers wanted to keep proximity. It wasn't really because they trusted the wheel in front of them by any means. So I was like, wow, there was a lot of differences. And, everyone kind of agreed. We saw on the Facebook Riders post, it was like all about doing your homework. You couldn't snake by and rely on someone to help you out. It was all about doing your homework.
Oh, I just loved it. It was really, really fun. And Vic, you and I, like, we were in our studio, we had our candy and stuff, but time just kind of flew by. Like, we turned on the stream. 7 hours later, we were like, is that it? Is there not more left?
Yeah, it was quite crazy. Like, it was definitely, like, before this, I was like, wow, 7 hours is going to be mental. But it actually flowed really nicely. I think, like, the tournament structure was a really nice addition to the racing. And, like, the 4 people omniums, like, we haven't really seen that before. And it was really interesting to see, like, the dynamics, as Beth said, like, the drafting and all that. And I just felt like, from my point of view, like, as producing it, it was so cool to see, the quarterfinals, and then you had to look forward to the next one, and then the semis, final. So yeah, like the 7 hours just flew by. It was great.
And the stories that were on display, because we started in the first quarterfinal, and I think everyone, when you look at the start line, it's Tim, Nigel, Allison, Aaron. They were like, well, Tim's gonna walk over with the bunch, and then Allison is gonna sneak by. But already there, Nigel Doyle comes on through, and I think, Beth, that kind of set the tone going forward that everybody is at danger. No single rider is safe, especially in this format.
Yeah, the format, again, I think we talked about it in our preview show, was really unforgiving. But what that did was, with some upsets and with sort of the emotion, it just kind of kept building, right? It was like a storm throughout the day where you saw the clouds kind of, bubbling up, and then you're like, well, what's going to happen? So, and then your mind starts going, well, if this person goes through and then they race that person and then it was just so intense and you couldn't look away. But there were definitely times where, people who don't usually make mistakes, and that was like, you just were like,
we can jump straight into it because this is like, I really want to talk about this because when you talk about mistakes, everybody thinks of that one moment. Quentin Timothy. In my entire broadcasting career, guys, I've never felt so bad to hear another rider like Timothy. It was on the verge of tears while being interviewed, and like all this sweat, literal tears, effort going into this, and one mistake. I mean, Vic, it's just gut-wrenching to see that one mistake costing both riders their journey into it. And it was part of the overall storyline of the day, kind of.
Yeah. No, like, that moment right there has to be like the most heartbreaking moment of like all time in CVRcade racing so far. I'm sure we'll see more of those moments. And for me, that was just crazy to see, because I like, who went down first? I don't even remember. But the only thing I remember is literally just Quinton and Timothy looked like, okay, they've got this, all right? Like I think Quinton made Timothy pass, so both of them will go through, right? That's correct, I think. And then in the end, like the final corner, they just both crash, and you just see the leaderboard, bam, bam, both of them third and fourth. I'm like, I just literally, my mouth was just wide open. I had no reaction because it was just mind blowing. It was crazy.
Yeah, and I was like screaming, and like if anyone had headphones on, they were like, "Whoa, what just happened?" If they weren't listening.
Yeah, the reaction.
So I do apologize. It's mental, but Beth, how like friendships can be broken from Cade racing? Like I was fearing that block-in would be the cause of somebody winning or going out, but here, a bit of greed, a bit of teammates, Quinton and Timothy going forward. I mean, how do they pick themselves up?
Well, I mean, I think that when I looked at it and I was thinking, well, was it really greed, to try to get them both through? I think that it was an act of kind of selflessness, I think, on Quinton's behalf to try to get Timothy up there as well. It's sort of like he could have just done, nothing, I guess. And, God, I don't know. I hope that there's some love and they're hugging it out. But there's definitely, the stakes were so high. And both of those racers have been at the top of their game. They don't often make, the mistakes, and the timing of that mistake, we knew going into that Omnium that Dark Matter Velo was going to be the decider, but I didn't know it was going to be the decider in the last, corner of it. I mean, that was just like, what? And I remember hearing your voice, because I wasn't commenting on that one, but I remember hearing your voice. You're like, like the level. It wasn't just the volume. It was like, wow, he's got some range. He's like up there. But but my heart sank, and and I say that for all of the racers, because I was rooting for for Jennifer. I was trying to pull for different people, and like Luis, who came into having those technicals, and he definitely has been upward trajectory, and to have some early crashes and never be able to sort of recover from that. Yet he was such a great sport about it, right? He was like trying to help Jennifer in the Omnium, and so we saw just a lot of personalities, and I really admire Tim and Quinton for trying to do that. I my heart broke for Timothy and for both of them, but the raw emotion was everywhere.
Yeah, before we move on, final note on that. I did feel really bad for Timothy, because Frank and I in the broadcast were kind of laughing at the time. Meanwhile, Timothy is hunched over the bike and he's like almost in tears. So when it was all said and done and the broadcast was over, I picked up my phone and I rang Timothy, and I'm like, whatever happened tonight, man, you made the semifinals. Be proud of it. Move on. Reset for next week. You can be sad tonight. You can be down in the dumps, but tomorrow is another day. And as much as we all love CVRcade, as much as this is like, we live, we breathe, and we sleep CVRcade, we dream it, there's more to life than this. So if you make a mistake, life goes on, reset, and the champions are those people that can make a mistake, laugh of it a day or two later, and then go back in. And that's where I think Timothy will struggle, but I think he's got what it takes to be competitive again next week. But I mean, looking around, it was really a day of mistakes being amplified. And Beth and I, we both mentioned this in the broadcast. I thought Jonathan would do much better, but oh my goodness, I have never been so wrong in my life. No. Like, Jonathan couldn't just not keep it down. And Vik, you thought this would happen. What made you so certain?
Yeah, well, see, I predicted this because, Hiran has been really good with the longer racing, especially the no skill, low skill, where it's just pure brute force. And he hasn't been on the platform long enough to understand this drafting, and if I bump into this rider in the corner, I might go down. And I think we saw so many silly crashes from him. And yeah, I just predicted that the less experienced riders would go out because of the racing, because there was no event where you didn't need form of skill. So yeah, I just predicted that like Hiron would struggle, and yeah, it was interesting. Speaking of him, because the blocking, he did pull a move on Roman Arena, but it didn't really. I think a few riders did, but the blocking, yeah, it wasn't really a dynamic being used that much. I think the reason why was quite funny. It might have been because he just crashed. He was barely riding.
True. I mean, out of the racing, but I think he'll reset. I think he'll go again. But also, one of the other stories, Beth, was the zone you got to commentate, Zone J. Sebastian, Casey, Peter, Kayla. Now, we have a little booth in here where we got the production. I can stand here and commentate. It was my zone off, so I was standing by the side. And by the end of it, Victor was like, can you just not stop talking to me? Like, I was sitting there doing phantom commentary because, like, it was so riveting. And, like, you got the honor of commentating that zone. I mean, what was that like?
Oh, well, I wish you would have turned on your mic and joined me. I would have been happy to, but I know
Victor
you
would
were
have
trying to
shot me.
take
I
a
would
break.
not. You'd be like, shut up.
I had a suggestion. I did suggest that because he was just commentating. I was like, might as well do it.
Anytime if you're on a break and you want to jump back in, that's totally cool. Yeah, well, that was one where it started to occur in my mind because, Sebastian raced that like a shark, right? He kind of like didn't put his back to the door, like, he kind of wanted to see the whole range, and I think that whole omnium was about who's going to initiate and who's going to react, and we're like the omnium of death and like the next omnium of death. Sebastian was just on fire, and it started in the first omnium that he raced. I really enjoyed Kayla putting the move on Casey at the end because, we thought she made a mistake with that, activating the lazy boy, and we're like, oh no, Casey's going to catch her. Casey does catch her. But in the end, she beats him in the sprint. It ends up costing her too much in the next race. But it was just so fun. Every time you go in, it's just Sebastian, dun, 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 the shark waiting. And then I enjoyed that omnium, but I still didn't know because Peter, the CCC guys did so well yesterday. I was thinking that they had a really good chance to put a couple racers all the way through.
Now, I have commentated a year of CVRcade, and I've commentated prior to that maybe 2 or 3 years of Zwift. Like, never in my life have I been so engaged in any gameplay. I mean, I had a nice interview with Tim prior to this podcast recording. That interview will be out tomorrow. But I mean, hearing the levels of details that Tim talks about, he was mentioning that on Saturn, like, he just was running out of gears. I mean, the wind at your back, he couldn't produce any more power, and talking about the strategies. I really hope for the next year's CVRcade World Cup that more people in the Swift community that I know and have friends of, and there are many people who sit on, they're almost afraid to try CVRcade because they don't want to be a laughingstock in their own friendship group, but they're just missing out on some of the most entertaining racing and just all around awesome community, because yesterday there was so much money on the line. For some of these people, it's life-changing. Like, it can allow them to pay rent, it can help them out, it can give them some float in their bank account. For others, they don't really need it, but there was no bad feelings. Like, not at one single point did one guy or one girl go, this guy cost me it, I'll come get him, or whatever, you'll hear from me. Everyone was like, I made a mistake, I deserve to be out. And that's so awesome, and I hope more people from the Swift world sees this. Most importantly, sees the money that was also won yesterday by never having to leave your garage. I mean, Tim is just $3,000 richer, Sebastian $1,500. Don't be afraid of what your friends might say. Have fun, stick with your gut, and come on, because this is it. This is so awesome. And we really saw that in the semifinals, because I think it really hit me, guys, when Ben Shuilong pulled one over on Tim Fulford. Like, I don't think anyone saw that coming, Vic, because you and I were sitting here, and Ben activates corner caper, and off he goes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that moment on Saturn, I think that's probably my, favorite, sprint moment. That was also, prior to, the Timothy one in the second semi, was definitely one of those, he just did that? What? Because it was just crazy. He just activated the corner caper, perfect timing, sprinted through, and the speed he got on that, he must have hit 60 k's an hour, and the gameplay just was crazy. and we had this split screen open. It was crazy to see like the difference between, you know, Tim and Ben, because Tim sprinted, and I remember this. He did like 1,400 equalized watts, but it did not matter because that corner, like that chicane, Ben just, he just took that to a new level. It was, definitely one of those moments where I was like, wow. Like, this racing is amazing.
I like the fact that Ben, he could have done like, you know, the Conor McGregor swagger walk after that one. He's like, yep, I just did that. I just pulled one over on the Tim Fulford. Absolutely amazing racing. He did, like, it was such a shame. I think Ben is great, but I think under pressure from time to time, he does suffer a tiny bit. And like we've seen him really improve a lot. And if he can get the last bit of swagger, if he can really embrace the Sith Lord Ben Shuilong personality or whatever, he can become so lethal. Because to have the confidence to pull that off, Beth, you're a racer. I'm sure you theory craft and you think about these tracks, but having the guts to pull off a move like that is not easy.
No, you do have to have a certain level of confidence, and you do also, have to have a level of, everyone talks about the physical endurance, but you need to have that mental endurance. And I think that what ends up happening is the mental fatigue really sets in. And, we can talk about equalization in a minute, because that's another whole story here about with the racing. There's nobody saying like, oh, I don't know about so-and-so's power. Like it's not even a conversation. It's like,
none of that.
Yeah. And, so it's all about the gameplay. It's all about who can outwit the opponent. We saw, again, this initiation versus reacting. Usually in the lead up, we'd see like Tim hanging on to his power ups, and, he'd make a mistake and he'd have to use it. So he'd have to be using it in a different time than we saw, and then everyone sort of taking all of this collective knowledge and then executing it, in these times where, I can make a break here, I can make a difference here. It's so much to unpack. It's so much to unpack. I love that moment with Ben, and the CCC guys did a lot of homework together, and that was why I was thinking they were going to make their way through, because Nigel was on top of his game. Peter made a couple mistakes, but all three of them were really great yesterday.
I mean, I would have probably called you crazy if you predicted Ben and Nigel to get further than Peter Kastrup. Like, Peter Kastrup, who's been the shining light, he's been the star at the top of the Christmas tree for CCC, and then he goes out in the first round, and Ben and Nigel, I mean, if they just correct a few of their mistakes, if they practice, you heard, I put out a post on Cade Rider saying, what was your highlight? And both Ben and Nigel, they're like, we didn't really practice enough because we didn't anticipate going through to the semifinals. So we practiced the quarterfinal like hell. But then we got to the semifinal, we're like, didn't plan for this contingency plan. Yeah. I kind of need to know how to ride Darth Matavello, and now is not the time to learn at mid-race. So they'll get better. I'm really impressed. I will think Peter as well. If he gets a better draw, if he doesn't go into the Omnium of Death, he probably goes further on.
Yeah, that's a tough lineup. That was a really tough lineup.
Good to see Kayla back too, Beth. I mean, Kayla, I love Kayla because her face kind of gives everything away. Like, she was angry, but angry at herself. She's like, I know I can do better. I have done this so many times, but for some reason, what's happening up here is not matching what my legs are putting out. And you can just tell her, she was like, this is annoying me. This is annoying me. When it clicks again.
Yeah, but because what can happen is, we know how strong she is. We know how smart she is. We've seen her be on the top of the Omniums. She had the injury to come back from. And what happens is you get a little rusty. Your reaction time, it changes. I'm a little nervous that I took Thursday off from racing. I raced on Tuesday, didn't race Thursday. Like, I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, guys, what's going on next week? What do I have to race? I have twitchy fingers, I have this like thing. So it's, I think that it's even more frustrating. Like, if I get lucky and have a race where I beat someone that I wasn't expecting to beat, I'm like, whew, that was lucky. But Kayla, when she beats someone, she's like, yeah, right, that's right, because I'm better at that course, or I did the right thing. And so I can imagine how frustrating it is to know what you know and to know what you bring, and then not be able to execute it because you're just a little bit, you got to get the cobweb swept out. So, but it was so good to see her race. I love her little lean to the side and her face digging down. So I love it.
Vik, when was the last time you raced? You heard Beth, she's a bit, she got cobwebs for not racing Thursday. When was the last time you raced?
I must be the rustiest person alive if that's the case. I think the last time I raced was like mid-October. I mean, and prior to that, I mean, I've only raced a couple of times really. So, I mean, I can only imagine like if I were to go into, let's say for fun, just the grand finale week, I would not make it very far because like you just need to know the corner speeds, like the dynamics of the game, and even someone like Kayla, who's been like she's been at the top, but if you have a few off weeks, you just lose that edge. And I think we saw that yesterday, which was like the amazing thing. You just could barely make any mistakes. I think like the reason why, you know, like Casey, Sebastian, and Tim and all those were in like the final was because they didn't make any mistakes, like not any major ones. And I feel, especially if I was to go back racing, yeah, like you wouldn't see me. I'll be gone.
The very last race on Sun Lane Change, not a single crash. Like racing for that amount of money and to not make a single mistake. That just speaks to the character of these racers and their coolness. But how about Nils Heldens? I think collectively, Nils, I think we will all take a bow and say, you know what, the Tempest, you proved us all wrong, Beth. Seeing him going from a almost counted out by us, we think he's not really going to go on through. Then he qualifies, then he goes to the next zone, suddenly he's in the finals.
Yeah, and again, I keep talking about sort of this trajectory that happens, and sort of like you know, there's a steep learning curve. So once you start to assimilate all of that stuff, you shoot up. And that he just kind of timed, you know, we talk about timing your training so that you're at the peak. We talk about timing your endurance. Just all of these factors came together for him. And it was really exciting to watch because, you know, you have on one hand Casey going, yeah, I'm a little disappointed with third. And you have Niels being like, yes, yes. You know what I mean? Like just, you know, just so pumped to be there. And I think that that was this jubilation that he wasn't able to experience until he completed the racing, right? He kept all of that emotion, good or bad, just kind of in check. He didn't want that to get out. And that is the brains of a racer, right? That is sort of like, I'm not going to celebrate. I'm not going to be disappointed. I'm going to keep myself together. And then at the end, he was like, yes. And I loved that he was just really pumped. And I'm very excited for him. So it was very cool.
The most endearing thing about Nils that Tim kind of let out in the interview is that the reason Nils was so happy that he had one goal in mind. So Nils is a Formula One fanatic. You heard him quote Sebastian Vettel in his winner interview. His celebration is based on Sebastian Vettel. And all he wanted to do was make enough money so he can go to the Belgian Grand Prix of Formula One. And $350 is more than enough. So he didn't care if he came first, second, or third, or fourth. He won the money. He can achieve a lifelong dream that he can afford thanks to CVRcade and his own personal, you know, efforts in the game. It doesn't get better than that. I mean, I think that all gives us the warm fuzzies. So, Nils, I can't wait to see what you bring. Seeing you get on the platform, get good. I mean, I remember the days, Nils, where you could barely get 10 minutes into a Swift race, but now you are like a favorite when it comes to Cade racing. So, for your work ethic and for everything, I mean, salute. That is awesome. But, guys, I think we need to give out some awards. Now, the bracketed session is done. The grand finale is next week. I want to start, so this is just thinking about the bracketed session and the open session. 3 awards I want to give out. First, best teammate. Best teammate for the last 8 weeks, Beth. Who would you say has been the best teammate? And you can only say one.
Did they have to race yesterday?
No, anyone in the open session bracketed session.
I think Modi was the best teammate for Team Cognition. I think that he consistently did what he needed to do for his teammates. We heard him in his interview say that the objective was to get as many Cognition racers through. That didn't happen. I think that, you know, he himself sat out. But yeah, I think he was the most teamiest person. Is that a word? Teamiest?
Who's your most teamiest person?
Teamiest person. You know, it's difficult, but I like definitely when you said it, I had Moti in mind because I I have like one particular moment. Not sure exactly when it was, but it was definitely on Temple Run, and I'm pretty sure it was Moti just absolutely drilling it to get. I think it was Sebastian.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's done it more than once because he's a great teammate, and I think yeah, I'll give it to Moti because he's a team leader, but he's also like he also helps the team. So if he has a tiny bit of a bad day, I feel like he just says like, okay, I'm gonna commit to the team. I'll do my best. I'll pull Sebastian back to the front in this case. And yeah, I think for me, he's just been the most like consistent like team player. So I'll give him the award as well.
I think to think outside the box, because I think on the like you can't deny it. Moti obviously
No.
just lays on the line. But honorable mentions. First of all, Alison Kubota. I mean, she's up there too. Team Cognition. If she's on the front, she will work with whomever. Like she will just fight on, fight on, fight on. And the same thing goes for Casey. Like these two riders, a teammate is more than just your own team because they make alliances as the race progresses. And there's certain riders that just get so much love. I mean, you know, my highlight is when Homer Thompson, after a day, goes on CVRcade Riders and goes, "Thank you, Louise, Roman Arena.
Yeah.
Thank you, Daniel, for sudden lane change." And I'm like, I didn't even know that was a storyline. I didn't even notice it. So cross-team teammates is something to really praise as well. Like good sportsmanship goes a long way, and I think Allison and then Casey share those two things. So next on up, second of 3 awards I want to give out. Best story of the last 8 weeks, Beth. What would you say has been your favorite storyline to see progress?
Oh my God, there's so many. Can you start with Vic?
Vic, you want to go
Why
first?
do I have?
You know, like we mentioned him before. I think Niels, honestly, because I'm not even sure he barely raced like the open session, and you know he was getting used to the platform. It's a big difference to Swift racing, like all the crashing dynamics, and I think it takes time to learn the platform and really enjoy it. But once you get hooked. And I feel like there was a moment in like the open session, bracketed session, where you could just tell like it just clicked. Like the racing, he just understood it. And him coming fourth in the final yesterday, I think, yeah, I just really like that story. Like never giving up, just grinding your way to the final. And I think that's an amazing story. So I'll give it to Niels.
What about you, Beth?
Okay, I'm back. I've got 3 ready, but I'll start with the first one. I have to say, I love Nigel. I know that he didn't make it all the way through, but the fact that he was, setting up backup computers, he was racing at 3:00 in the morning. He had done the homework, and I think that that's just and the amount of on-screen enthusiasm, right? Like, we all started, months ago on this platform, and we would be like, oh, this is, needs to be tweaked, and this might be whatever. Like over the course of months, he has, and in the last few weeks, has just shown this personality that I didn't know existed, and he's so fun to watch. You can't help but root for him, and he's dancing, and he's kicking butt, So and then I can talk about Jennifer, and I can talk about Aaron, but these racers that have kind of gone all in a way that it's not the Tim Fulford story, but it's the story of I am committing. All my chips are in. I'm committing everything, and those are the ones that I just love.
It's a loaded question because when you look at the stories, like everybody has a story. You look at Frank Garcia. He goes out with what could be a life-threatening is like surgery injury. He comes back to a sport that he loves, and thanks to the game he created, he's able to be competitive. Now he wasn't able to compete in the finale, which I believe really hurts him deep down, as competitive as he is. But then again, you look at Vibeke Bertram. She comes on and I am friends with Vibeke on Facebook, and she's actually sharing in her personal Facebook, tagging friends saying, this is real esports, watch this, and seeing her get better and better and better. And that one day on the broadcast, when she single-handedly carried it, has made me a Vibeke Bertram fan forever. But then you keep going on. Luis Soberanese, when he initially came on, Moti pinged me and said, this guy right here will be the best CVRcader ever. And he's been getting better. He hasn't lived up to the hype just yet, but I think when Luis really starts hitting it, I think he'll come in with stride, but it's early days, and you continue. I mean, there's so many more. Jennifer getting good at the game. Aaron, I mean, him shaking the room on Echelon.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Best highlight ever. Team Cycling Hub coming together. I mean, everybody gives Cycling Hub a lot of crap for being a blocking team, but they almost had all 4 riders in the finale. I mean, this is also a question that I want to extend to anyone listening. Your favorite story? Because I think at the core of CVRcade, it's just stories, and that's what makes it so compelling, that everybody, when they turn off their computer, when they turn off their smart bike or whatever for the day, they leave with a story. And that's really what makes us coming back every Tuesday, every Thursday, every Saturday, is that we want to fill out this notebook of stories. And when we come back and we tell our husband, wife, daughter, friends, whatever, we're like, you won't believe what happened to me tonight. I was dust ball crit. I know you don't know what that means, but somebody made me block, and I officially hate that person. They're getting cold for this year, and actually it's my fault. But that's what's amazing. So I extend that to you guys. And then, since we are the broadcasting team, guys, I think the only fitting last award goes to your favorite streamer. The streaming bit is really what makes this fun as well for us, because we get to ask the same tedious questions time and time again. How are your legs feeling? What do you make of this? What went through your mind when you make that crucial mistake that cost you $3,000? I mean, these guys have to bear with us. So since you two have both gone first, I'll go first with this one. I think it's a close one because everyone is different. Timothy Tamont probably deserves this one more than the rest, because no one I'd rather interview than Timothy. Every time we start the broadcast and Victor goes, so Jesper, who do you want to go to first? I'm like, is Timothy in? I'm like, let's go to Timothy. Who have we got? Who are we joined by now?
Yes, I'm sorry, Perito decided she wanted a cameo.
Oh, that's cute.
It's like Perito that rhymes with...
Well, so for those listening to audio, this is why you watch the video podcast. It's not Timothy who's just surprise joined us in the broadcast here, but it is a pet of Beth York, who's very, very cute, by the way. So I do recommend turning on the broadcast. But Timothy Tamont, my favorite streamer on the broadcast. Beth and company, who do you think?
Wow. Well, of course, I love to watch Kayla and Allison. Allison just kind of rocks it. She's not being interviewed. She doesn't usually have audio. But I got to tell you, in the summer, racing with anything on your head, let alone a time trial helmet. Goodbye, kitty. And the glasses. I love it. But I commented a lot on Zone T, so I really had fun with Aaron because he would be so deadpan, and I'd ask him a question. I'd be like, so what's your strategy? And he'd be like, I'm going to do some pedaling, and I'm going to probably do some steering, and I'm going to try not to crash. He just kept it and he was just so fun. When I needed comedy and I needed, people brought their personalities, and I think I really enjoy the personalities. So I guess I picked 3. I couldn't pick one. I picked 3.
Don't worry. We all do that, especially I've been guilty of that today all the way through. So Vic, your last one.
Yeah, there's so many. I think the funniest thing is that we see this progression of characters, because if you were to go back to a stream back in a few months back, you would see these people and be like, this is how Nigel was? He's so fun now. And I feel like those people, those are my favorites. And I mean, yeah, I can't really pinpoint out to one specific person because I don't even think that's fair. I kind of Nigel, if someone crashes, Nigel, because it's just oh, and then head shake. You always know it. And that's hilarious. And you always have Timothy when his celebrations, or it's just this animation he has, which is hilarious. And I can say this as well. Casey Shum, if he's in a group, you will know he will stir that pot. He's gonna go, rotate, come on, come on. And the funniest thing about him, is that he reacts to the commentary, which for me, like producing it, is just hilarious. So usually there's at least a few highlights where it's just maybe the action in the actual game isn't that exciting, but one of those will do something funny. I'll be like, that's a highlight. So I'll give those three the award. I mean, I can't really pinpoint it down. And honestly, there's so many more that they're hilarious to watch. So yeah, it's all fun.
I'm not sure how Sebastian does this, but I tried to get his message up on my screen when he does this into the broadcast. I'm not sure how he ever does it. I mean, honorable mention, Sebastian Kuhn with the most deadpan delivery of every single joke. He manages to throw me off my game every time, because how do you reply to, I'm dead? I have nothing. Like, you can't. There's no comeback. He just manages to take all your power, all the leverage you have as a broadcaster to make this person laugh, and he just goes, nah, you're not having it. You should really watch the video, guys. This
Homer,
is good.
though. We have to talk about Homer, though. He wasn't in the broadcast yesterday, but Homer is a fan favorite. Every time he's in the broadcast, we always hear people are like, go Homer! So he's a lot of fun.
On that note, we'll end on a Frank celebration, whatever he does this one. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this podcast once more. Let us know your awards. You have the 3 titles. I would love to hear the community on this, because this is just Beth, Vik, and I's opinion on this. I'm sure it's all varying. Everybody has got different stories. Thank you so much for making it fun, and thank you for making our Saturday fly by. I mean, 7 hours. On the face of it, you think 7 hours of a virtual game? I mean, I've got better things to do, but we couldn't get away from it. We're just like plastered up towards the screen. It's amazing. More information will come on the grand finale during the next week, so be on the lookout when that's available, when the seeding comes out, etc. You can count on Vik, Beth, and I just dissecting it, offending a few people, and praising a few others. That's what we do for a living. Thank you so much for listening once more. Thank you for being awesome. From all 3 of us, happy December, and we'll see you next time.